To say about it. So maybe start with one that I found quite interesting, language, if that's okay. I think we have two good cases. We have a French native and a German native that are often talking in English. So maybe you can share some of your views on how you see that working and what the challenges are.
So I'm allowed to. Thank you. So I think the microphone stopped working. So
Just bring it down.
Which?
Pull it down.
Good. So now it's working. Is it working?
Is it closer? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So concerning language, I was luckily at that point in the discussion, and what I got aware of language is, while thinking, you try to use a certain kind of expression. So you use language to express your idea. Also, the kind of language restricts my idea, and during the discussion, I got aware of the kind of, one is to have a common language to get a greater audience, and giving up this kind of variety of different languages, but having a broader audience to form understanding. On the other side, you lose a lot of diversity of different logical thinking models, because Chinese functions completely different in our brain, or might function in their brain and create completely different pictures, like English. So this is my takeaway, for that English and social media might become a certain kind of blurriness in the future of innovation.
Okay.
I would just add that you have the logical processing of the language, but you also have the emotional processing, and there's a phrase that says, talk to someone in English and to a non-native speaker in English, and you will talk to his head, and talk to him in his native language, and you will talk to his heart. So it also depends of what you expect from this person, if you want just to provide raw information, or if you expect to influence in a world that is a lot about selling and communicating nowadays.
Okay, I think that there's a nice connection to also one of the topics that was raised, was the social impact. So I know that for our company, only 40% of the people understand English. So if you work in global teams, on the one hand, if you use social media tools, you have a certain way of interacting. I think you also mentioned that speaking to the head or the heart. But what are some of the, I think, ways of working or engaging with people you haven't met that you would recommend, knowing the technology, but if you're constrained in one way that you can't just meet everybody, how would you deal with basically get to know and get into in a working mode with people you haven't met yet?
At least in our network, what we try to do is to have national chapters to make a link between the common organization and the local organizations, so that you can personalize the relations as much as possible, and you can know who you're speaking to because you're closer to these people. I guess that's a way we've found to solve this, to try to solve it.
How do you do that? Is that technology-wise, or picking up the phone, or?
Technology-wise, we just communicate with our national chapters through all channels of communications that are commonly used, who themselves communicate to their local, the local people. And the people who don't speak English are reached this way. And the ones who have more of an international mindset and skills can be reached through our European-wide communication channels.
So I agree to the discussion that we need this kind of kickoff, that we need this kind of physical minimum one time of getting to know each other, so that I really can understand and feel the person one time. That I can, in social media, becomes a certain kind of efficiency-driven tool, that this first time, only one time perhaps in my life, to meet this person just for a coffee, helps me to understand a certain kind of stress and between the different cultures. So this is my takeaway.
Okay. At any point in time, if you have a question or a remark, please raise your hand, and then I think we can also involve you. Or just acknowledging that if you have one, I'm just eating mints. Okay. Then maybe looking at, there were some topics talking about getting in the new generation, what skills do we expect them to have, how should we deal with recruitment. Maybe you can comment on how you see the career of the new generation looking like, and because they're not likely to come into a company and work there for their whole life. They're more like to change at a more regular pace. How do you see that from their point of view, and how should you deal with that from a company point of view?
So from my understanding, you have this kind of risk that those people jump off quite quickly, and these kind of open working models, like this kind of fuzziness that you are tolerant that they are doing certain kind of side projects just to train themselves, just to remotivate themselves. So I guess this kind of tolerance will be a certain way, and to create a different kind of value model also. To measure, we talked about this kind of a shorter period of measuring to know what really is going on inside of this person and giving faster feedback.
Yes, we had a 20-minute discussions with all the representatives of the connected generation just before this session. And something that is a very hot topic apparently for our generation is the fact that we expect more flexible organizational structures with probably a higher tolerance to risk, which would allow the previous generations to give more of the younger generation a chance to try things where they might make a mistake, but at least they would develop themselves. So we are expected to be more flexible and adaptable, to go to different countries, be multitasking, but we also apparently expect more flexibility from the management.
So that clearly has an impact on the rules of the business, of the governance.
So, but I should also say that we talked today a lot about elite, so about a certain kind of elite of people inside. There was this, wait a second, we are global companies, we have so many different kind of levels inside of our company. This doesn't apply to this sector, and perhaps the amount of people. There's a connected generation coming to a different sector that has quantitatively more employees, and we don't have any solution. So this kind of freedom of creation, this is somehow an elite thing, but we need to find out at a certain point, no, this is really not, and this will be very strict. So perhaps we have to be very early then to go already in the universities or into the schools and try to already train them, educate them how life will be. I don't know how to also to bring already, to inform people about what working will be like and if they're okay with this, and also ask, for example, to develop together with them something like a model.
Well, I know that some universities now have a program to learn students how to write, because they're so used into the text way of writing things, and it's all like hi instead of dear, and see you and things like that, instead of sending kind regards. So I think there's a certain need for etiquette, especially for the younger generation, because they're so used to communicating in a way that is quite different from how traditional communication has taken place. And I'm sure that for some people it's like, hey Jude, how are things? That if you communicate like that, it would be seen as quite offensive. Should we have certain programs then when people come in to make them aware, or to test what their capabilities are into those aspects?
I guess it would be a test drive. Just if we do something like one week summer classes, and just to see and to train, or also to take. We try to do this today for production development and sales, to see where are really the pain points, where we do not have any problems, and also to define later on, this is really a pain point. It's such a rigid structure. We don't have any kind of question. I answered, sorry.
Yes, it's very interesting that companies are developing these type of graduate programs or training programs that give a certain tolerance to risk and trial without harming the company structurally. It's very important for young people to be able to express their capabilities.
This is then something definitely for management to be aware, to have certain more flexible way when young people come in, that they realize that they have been used to work and act in a different way. So in a way I wanted to links very nicely to governance. So which clearly shows that going forward, the traditional typical rules need to be more flexible, and we need to have clear focus on maybe for the newer generation coming in, we need to have a bit more flexibility. Maybe linking to social profile. I think today on the outside world, some people have a social profile, some businesses have a social profile. How do you see that evolving, and what would be your recommendation for the young generation in terms of do's and don'ts?
I can start with that. So you mean about social media?
Yeah, it's just can have a social presence on LinkedIn, on Sing. Should it be on every single network? Should be basically on Facebook, have everything open? Should you be restricted, things like that? What would be your recommendation in terms of image building? Because especially I think in recruitment, those sources are more and more used to get a view of if you recruit a person. Basically, does he spend all his weekends going out, or is he more the quiet type of person?
So we just before had a very passionate discussion, took about 10 minutes. We came to a conclusion that it is really disturbing for us to know that recruiters are looking at our Facebook page, especially when we hear about stories of young people being fired or not recruited because of personal pictures that were posted on Facebook. We think that we have a right to have a private life, and at the same time we are providing this information by having a profile, but we do not accept and we do not like the fact that this information is used against us sometimes. So we are a bit paradoxical. Like for many things. And we also have the question of when Facebook starts, when private life starts and when it stops, regarding image, but also regarding time, to have our time for ourselves. But that's maybe another point.
But is that a naivety, or what is it?
Sorry?
It sounds awfully naive to me.
No, I think as well you can't just say, look, we don't want them to use it because they will use it. So I think if you keep on publishing the pictures of the nice parties or whatever you do during the night, then in a way you have to bear the consequences, or on the other hand, change the way you use Facebook. So only make it visible to your friends and other friends of friends. But I think to keep on working on things and expect the headhunters or other recruiters to change, I don't think that will happen.
I think, for example, I think that if a company doesn't hire you because of some Facebook pictures that you posted, it already says something about that company as well. And maybe you don't want to work for this company who doesn't want to hire you because of a Facebook picture. If you don't ask first, what was this picture about, or all your pictures are about you partying. Are you just this party guy who doesn't really want to work, or it says something about your personal profile, and it's somewhere the company that finds you and you that find an appropriate company.
Yes, and what we also mentioned that some recruiters actually ask in interviews, so I saw this picture of you on Facebook, but they just want to see your reaction. And if you say, oh, that was the only beer that I drank this year, they will just say you're a liar and maybe not hire you. So it's also tricky.
So that maybe the new generation needs to develop some skills on how to deal with these things during a recruitment process. because I think it will be there, especially if I remember my time at university. I think all the consulting companies came, so everybody was screened to then in the end recruit maybe 10 or 15 people out of the 200 that graduated. So I think these things will always be used as some kind of a first elimination thing. So yeah, I think it's just something to be aware about.
People lie. They lie on Facebook, they lie on LinkedIn, they lie on Twitter. What they're doing, nobody Twitters. I'm now watching The Bold and the Beautiful for 4 hours. So they Twitter, they're reading a book which is not true or something.
But this is
and everybody knows that. So I wouldn't be bothered with. I mean, students exaggerate their fantastic party life on Facebook.
No, but it's
to have an image.
It's
towards others. People know that. So
yes.
I think it's a nonsense.
I guess all the social profiles that you will have, how many you ever have. So I don't know how many I have. So it sums up into certain kind of overall authenticity, and you decide how authentic and polished this is. So if you want to be very authentic, you also have to live something with some discomfort. But this is also your character type. There are other people in business who say, I'm very artificial. In business life, I'm very artificial, I'm a public person. But I always have to keep up this. So like you said, okay, this is a political game, but perhaps he's a very good political guy. So, but you never should question yourself, why is this kind of feedback coming? Because the feedback will come anyway then.
Yeah.
So this
and
is...
it's all about managing the perception of you as a person.
Yes.
And if you have Facebook or LinkedIn, you probably manage that completely different, because you see LinkedIn as maybe a professional network and Facebook as personal. But because it's all out in the open, to a certain extent, can be used the other way around. And it's just, in my opinion, you should be aware of the fact that if you think LinkedIn is for business purposes, Facebook can be used for that as well. Check, to do things. So, and if it can be used, it will be used.
And this is also my understanding right now, so that I say it's just only a different side of the same coin, and I give it just a different dimension of my personality, but I don't give my private life. So it's just only a product that Facebook was created, and using words very cleverly. There's just like neural marketing and thinking these are friends. So this is, but how to make this, I don't know if a company can make an awareness in a crowd that is just perceiving and directly using this. So I guess it's then at that point very late. So.
I'd just like to add, we're speaking a lot about managing your own profile, but very often, like, if you don't even have a Facebook account, people can still take pictures of you in places that you don't want them to, post them, tag you, and you're still associated to Facebook without even having an account.
Yeah.
So managing your account isn't something that you can completely grasp.
It's just a tool for me. If I'm recruiting a new recruiter and I look at LinkedIn and the recruiter doesn't have a LinkedIn page, and I would say, well, it's no good because.
And again, that's perception, because you might have very different reasons for not being on LinkedIn.
I think it is important that everybody. That's my personal belief, that it is important to have a professional social presence in a network like LinkedIn or Xing. And what you use Facebook for, I think that's your choice, but you can, I think to your point, you can compensate the things you can't control by having a professional managed, by you managed LinkedIn profile. Because I do know that it is used. I also know that we even use it for internal recruiting. I know of an example where basically they needed to find a profile, and somebody in the holding scanned basically LinkedIn to find a person that was already working for the company. So it is really being used. So it's just something to be aware about, and just it doesn't take that much time, because I think within half an hour you can have a fairly decent visibility. Yeah.
And I mean, there's a discussion if a company has to, like in the code of conduct, has to step back and making an official statement saying we don't take Facebook into account. If we are looking for recruitment, we don't do this. So this might also be an option to go that way. but it's nevertheless, Facebook is a public source.
But that is something that you do not have under control.
Pardon
So
again?
Facebook is something you have under your own control. You don't control the company that writes that policy.
Or sometimes you think that you have control of it because you put privacy settings, but you don't know what technology could be invented to go past these privacy settings.
There are websites that basically allow you to see what is out there concerning yourself. And I've read that a few times, and it's amazing. There's a lot more out there than what you think is out there, and it's just something to be aware about. And the tools are there. So, okay. Then maybe focusing on something else, we talked about empowerment of people, work-life, that the new generation is looking at having more flexibility, not necessarily the 9 to 5, also being able to use Facebook and other tools in the office, and then compensating by working at home or wherever they are. How do you look at that?
We had also a conversation about what it is to work and live in the same place, especially because in Jade headquarters, that's what we experience. We work and live in the same place, and we have a lot of discussions about the challenges of doing so. So the fact of being alone at your home, probably working alone and living at the same place, is the problem of not making a clear separation between both lives. But if you apply this to a teamwork, if you live with the same people and work with the same people, you also have difficulties to manage personal skills versus professional skills, and that raises also the question of how do you draw the line between your personal relations and your professional relations. I think that the new generation tends to mix them much more, and there's an open question as to what consequences it actually has on our professional life.
I mean, today we didn't went completely differentiated through all the different levels that we have really in our companies. So in some areas it might be possible to have a little bit more flexible working environment. Nevertheless, there's this kind of performance management by end of the year, or also half-year review. And so these kind of monitoring systems is still there, where you create the performance and the results. From my understanding, from my personal understanding, is not that relevant. So, but if other people in the environment becomes then completely alienated because only one person is behaving that way and the others feel completely strange, then it's still not acceptable. So it's more like a common proceeding in a long changing environment. And if, for example, Toyota is deciding for the whole company because production can't do this, then also the others don't do it, then it's a complete valid point. So I would keep it completely as a negotiation between the employees and also the company.
Yeah. Okay. I have 2 more points. One, I think the quite provocative statement, we don't need a CEO, we just need somebody to clearly communicate the direction. What do you think about that?
I still think that in our personal point of view, so as a coming from biomaterial science, the kind of leadership has somehow changed, and still this kind of leader is very helpful in being still very innovative and finding new ways, and also giving then other audiences a mouth. So the final consensus and to express consensus in the crowd is done then by the CEO, which is it's a very new kind of because inside of Bayer right now, the CEO has a block to every employee inside of the company, having a feedback loop, so he could also create a certain kind of veto across the other top management. So it's a completely new kind of leadership style.
I think it's nice to be inclusive, and everybody gives inputs for a certain period of time, but at a certain point the inputs have to stop and a decision has to be taken. And you'll never reach 100% consensus, and I believe this is where the CEO comes. And says, okay, I have listened to what you have to say, but now I am making the decision.
Okay, yeah, good point. And then I think the final thing, leading by influencing. Steve explained it. Do you have any ideas on how you could use that in basically what you are doing? So rather than me saying this is what I want, but then somehow take people on the journey to get to the point where you want them to go. Maybe a difficult question, but.
It's quite a difficult question. So there comes this.
But maybe in your case, Ralph, you do a lot of work on trying to encourage be more visible, social media on the outside. I'm sure you meet a lot of resistance here and there.
So I mean,
yeah.
it somehow falls back. One direction is lead by example. So you do this to show the value. You create a small team that is buying into this and not explaining them to everyone. If one team becomes very successful, then the other might follow, just to understand how this kind of value was created. So this is the other one. Is I just got this kind of please fear the manipulation. So influencing someone might be in the connected generation be seen as manipulation. So they're very skeptical on being influenced. So, and this is what I directly also was chiming in my head as a word.
About this point that maybe leaders need to develop persuasion and selling skills towards their employees. What I have the impression of is that typically you have to sell yourself to your hierarchy or try to influence your hierarchy. And there's a chain of influence. Even the CEO has to maybe sell to the shareholders or to external stakeholders. So you just need to be able to take this skill of selling yourself to your hierarchy and apply it to selling yourself to your subordinates, probably.
Good, thank you. Thank you all for the very interesting input. Thank you for the 4 people that summarized this. Mathieu and Ralph, thank you for your input. I also would like to thank the speakers, Heather, Ralph, Heather, Dennis, and David. David, if you could just come to the front, we have a little present for you. I think this concludes the event. I think for me it was very well organized. I really enjoyed it. And a lot of different good discussions. We still have the after event. So knowing how good you like to interact and discuss, I think there's a certain time the gate closes, but that's around 11 o'clock or so. Definitely look forward to seeing you for maybe another short talk or follow-up. Thank you.